An absolutely crazy game in Dallas that was a blowout, but then it wasn't, but then it kind of was. Plus, all NBA teams and people crying over Joel Embiid. Did he get screwed? We'll talk about that. And a preview of the Celtics and the Heat. Game 5 coming up right now on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, happy Wednesday. And on Wednesdays, we're here for you. Your first listen every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts, free, available everywhere, and on YouTube. I'm John Karalis, back after a week off, covering the Celtics in Miami. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm obviously host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at John_Karalis.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. You can find me on Twitter. It's at NolaJake.
It's just like riding a bike. You get back on it and it's perfect. It's flawless. It's almost like I didn't exactly forget how to intro the show, Jake.
Look, people have off nights. We've seen it in the playoffs from a couple of teams, a couple of players too. Maybe it'll be a weird podcast, just like the weirdness of the game we just watched.
Oh, that's pro. That's a pro. Later on, we'll talk about the Celtics and the Heat series. Second segment, we'll do the All-NBA. I don't know what, there's not much, although I guess we can talk about Embiid and the people in Utah probably pissed off. But let's just start here with the Golden State Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks. A 10-point game, Jake. Close one. Nail biter. What a back and forth battle this was. No, the Golden State Warriors were down big. I texted you at one point during this game going, classic Warriors in what should be a very comfortable closeout game, falling behind by as many as 29 points. But amidst the weirdness, a rain delay, crazy free throw, and there was a comeback in the fourth quarter to get this all the way down from 29 points to 8. But the Mavericks held on. Jake, this one was exhausting. And weird and fun. Like I don't even know where to start with this game.
It's a funny game, right? Because for all of the things that you just mentioned, I mean, a rain delay, right? Like I've had that here in New Orleans actually, where they had to postpone a game, but they play indoors. You should be having issue with like water falling from the sky onto the court, which is always kind of funny when some weirdness happens, like that. It's funny because like this game, you shouldn't have needed to watch the fourth quarter. They pulled the starters at the end of the third, and it was like, we're not going to see Steph Curry anymore. We're not going to see any of this. It's not going to matter. We don't need to pay attention. It's one of those things where we probably could have started recording in the middle of the fourth quarter, and it would have been fine.
Actually, almost that.
Yeah, I know. Then all of a sudden it's like 16 points and there's like 8 minutes left to go. And you're like, well, it's the Warriors. We're going to have to watch this because that ain't a safe lead. Then all of a sudden it's 10, then it's 8. And it's like, wait a second. They did this with the backups. If they put Steph and all of these guys back in, what might they be able to do? And it just added to like a little bit of drama to this game that really didn't have it and just had some kind of funny moments. So I don't know, props to both teams for at least making it kind of interesting down the stretch and giving us a reason to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one way to frame it. I'm calling up the fourth quarter. Jonathan Kuminga getting some run here. The first real
early
run
in this one too, right? Like not just in the blowout. Steve Kerr was going to his bench early in this game, playing a ton of guys just to find anything that was working because Golden State was just a little bit off, and I guess he wanted to mix it up and just see if that kind of gave this team any sort of spark.
Yep. And so Kuminga, comes in, plays okay. Then you get 10 points from him in the fourth quarter. You get 6 from Jordan Poole. You get 8 from. Whoops! I just blew out my. I'm having the equivalent of the. Forget it.
The Golden State Warriors here.
Golden State Warriors here. That's all right. Technical difficulties in the middle of a podcast. You think I'm going to stop? No, I'm not going to stop. I don't. So let's get to the actual meat of this game. The Mavericks did a good job attacking early, and if there's anything, I don't expect this to be a miracle comeback. I don't expect this to go 7. You almost wish that maybe the Mavericks would have figured out attack early and then the threes might fall late. You almost wish they would have figured that out in game 2 or 3, but it took them a while. They finally got into that mode, probably with a little bit of help from a less than engaged Golden State Warriors team, and that's how they built their big lead. Can they sustain it? That's the big question for the Mavericks. And I'll tell you, just from a guy who's covering the Celtics series, I'm sure people in Boston and Miami are like, hey, however long the Mavericks can figure this out for, that'd be great. Let's delay the Warriors taking a vacation before the NBA Finals, and let's make them work a little bit here.
Yeah, look, they finally shot well. That's kind of what this one I think really comes down to, right? Like sometimes it's a cliche to say, but it's a make or miss league, and you saw it. The Dallas Mavericks in this one shot 46.5%. They had 20 made threes. They were just sinking looks that they weren't hitting in game 3. And I remember seeing before the game an interview with Jason Kidd, their head coach, and he's like, yeah, they got the green light. Like, we want them to shoot. And I was like, wait, did you not watch game 3? Are you sure you want these guys shooting? Well, he had the right idea of just go out, rip threes, make them, and try and see if you could keep up with that. And they were shooting early and often. And it also came off of Luka really, I thought, hunting that matchup with Steph Curry to try and get him on a switch and then drive and attack. And you saw that repeatedly all game. And Golden State even threw a zone out there a whole bunch, I thought, at the Dallas Mavericks to see if that would slow it down. And they were still forcing Steph Curry onto Luka in those zones. And you saw it every time he would just drive and then kick it out from 3 when the help defense came over, and they were making the threes, the looks that they weren't hitting in game 3. And yeah, it's amazing what you can do when you start hitting your shots in the NBA.
Yeah, and Luka wasn't even the one who was hitting the shots, right?
No.
So he shoots 38.5%, 3 of 11 from 3, but the 30 points, he got 7 free throws, the 14 rebounds, 9 assists, but 2 steals, 2 blocks for him. So stepping up a little bit on that end. But you're right. It's the distribution and, Bullock coming in and hitting threes, Dorian Finney-Smith. If those guys, I'm going to go on a limb here, Jake, and say if those guys are hitting 10 of 17 of their 3-pointers, the Mavericks have a chance to win this, to win a couple more games here. But, I saw some really, decent minutes from Davis Bertans. You get some minutes from Maxi Kleber. It's the role players. It's the role players stepping up. But again, it's all in how you get those 3-pointers. It's attack, collapse the defense, hit them in the weak points, force when you attack the weak spots, you force other guys on defense to cover for them, and then you spray, and then that's where you get open 3-pointers. I think the Mavs have been too willing to take the early 3-pointers and not do that work to set up the more open ones. And it's too late now because it's still a 3-1 series. And at some point, Golden State's going to wake up and finish these guys off. But at the very least, they've learned a lesson, and it's something you can carry into the offseason, but also make them sweat, make them work, take some pride in what you do, and don't go out in 5. See if you can make them work and make them sweat a little bit.
Yeah, I would assume this will be the general game plan for them going into the next game. I think it's just kind of as simple as that. If they can do that and hit their threes, they might have like a puncher's change in this. But as you said, the series effectively, I think, is probably over. I don't know. Maybe I just reverse jinx the Mavericks here or something like that. So all of you Mavs fans and Nick, don't come at me. I'm actually trying to help you guys, right? That's totally what I'm doing here. No, I mean, you're right? They went inside. They tried to be aggressive with Luka early, create open looks for others, and weren't just settling for like easy shots that they could take. And they had the Golden State Warriors rotating on big, long rotations and kind of scrambling on defense on those closeouts. When those aren't effective, it's not really going to work. And I think that's why they started finally getting some of those looks. And look, sometimes it just takes being at home a little bit and some like rest there to hit some of those shots. But now you go back on the road. I don't know if those role players are going to play nearly as well. So I think it's still a very big uphill battle for the Dallas Mavericks here, despite, look, good performance from them. They did get good minutes from Bertans in this one, I thought, actually. I didn't think he was as bad as he's been at times this series. If you can get that, like, it's huge. But I just don't know if these are the guys that I feel trust in to do that regularly.
No. I mean, in the end, the Warriors are going to be the Warriors here, and they'll close this out at some point. But it's good to see. It's good to see the Mavericks show some fight. It's good to see them. I think start to figure some things out, and show why they were so good in the second half of the season. Defensively, I thought that doing a good job on the defensive end, going out, playing off of Luka not being just the complete center of everything. That yes, you're playing off of him, but other guys are contributing. So we'll see. I don't know. I feel like I want to get too deep into this game because
I thought it was it's the shooting, right? Like they made shots that they missed in game 3 and they won. Like it's just sometimes it is a simple game, right, to analyze. And I want to get earn our money here and give you deep insights. And they made their shots. Good for them.
We're up against the break, but the blowouts, I think is the other thing that people are talking about here. The blowouts in this whole first or throughout the playoffs, that we're heading towards the playoffs with the most blowouts of all time. That's becoming an issue. And I know later when we talk about the Celtics Heat series, that's been nothing but blowouts for the most part. Quickly, do you think that's an issue?
That's a problem with the 3-ball, right? Like it giveth and it taketh away at times. And if you're making those, you're going to blow teams out if your opponent isn't doing it. And I think you're sometimes seeing these games come down to who makes the most threes, who's shooting well and who isn't. No, I don't think that's great. I don't want to go all old man yells at cloud and be like the 3-ball's a problem because I don't think it is. But you're definitely seeing the drawback of that in the postseason. And I think it really kind of comes down to that. You've seen it. A lot of teams just shoot poorly and then the other team doesn't, and it's a 20-point win for them.
All right. We'll see what happens moving on. But for now, we're going to move on to the all NBA teams, which were announced before this game. We'll talk about that in a minute after I talk to you about Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market, and Built Puffs, the brownie batter puff. You've heard me correctly. Brownie batter puffs. It's like sticking your hand into a big bowl of brownie batter, except it is 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, 7 grams of sugar. The brownie batter puffs is basically a marshmallow with chocolate infused with this brownie flavor. It's like licking the brownie spatula clean, but it's healthy and you get that 17 grams of protein. It's a great snack. It's made with collagen protein, so your body absorbs it very efficiently, and there's tons of health benefits. It's the best thing I can tell you about the Built Puffs is I had a 13-year-old in the car with me when I got my shipment of Built Puffs. He took one and then later took another one. That's how delicious they are. If a 13-year-old is doing, those kids don't lie. If he didn't like it, he would have just spit it out. But he basically took my whole box. So it's almost too delicious. So try them out for yourself. The Built Puffs. Go to built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. It works every single time. LOCKED15. You get 15% off your order. LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Why not make one of these team podcasts that's still in the playoffs your second listen every day? Obviously, I do Locked On Celtics, Locked On Heat. You got Locked On Mavs, Locked On Warriors. Everything's going to be covered on those podcasts before the game, after the game. It's going to be a great post-game podcast on Locked On Mavs. I'm sure they're going to get into a lot of that madness over there. So make them your first listen, make a second listen after Locked On NBA. Jake, the all NBA teams were announced. I know that everybody's on pins and needles for this announcement. So let's go through it real quick. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the only guy unanimous first team. Everybody put Giannis number one. Luka, Nikola Jokic, Devin Booker, Jayson Tatum make up your all NBA first team. Second team is Joel Embiid, John Morant, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan. Third team, Karl Anthony Towns, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Trae Young, Pascal Siakam. Notable exclusions: Rudy Gobert left off, Chris Middleton, Donovan Mitchell, I guess Fred VanVleet was getting a lot of love for an All NBA team. He was left off. Who else? I guess that's good for the notables. Desmond Bane was left off. Jimmy Butler. How do you feel about the All NBA teams?
I'll be honest. I don't have that many. Look, for how it is and how the voting goes and the positions, which we'll get into in a second, I actually don't have that many problems with this. I kind of love it because it's fun to just get fired up about your guys and where they should be, but without like a horse in the race this year on this sort of thing. This seems about right. You know, there'd be some tweaks I'd make, but overall, I can't really complain that much. I don't think anyone was like truly snubbed in this that should have been on that wasn't, or anything like that. So overall, like 90%, I think they kind of got this one right, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's any real kind of exclusions. I might be able to hear the argument that one of the forwards could have gotten in over LeBron because of how much time he missed, but they're I have no problem with that either way. I really don't have any problem with this. I feel like Fred VanVleet could have gotten some love, but he only got 1/3 team vote. So generally, that was not the consensus.
No, like none of the other vote getters were anywhere near making it onto the All NBA teams. Essentially,
it wasn't like last year where Jayson Tatum was left off, even though he had more points than Kyrie Irving, which cost Jayson Tatum $30 million in his extension. Which, by the way, with Booker and Karl Anthony Towns, they're both eligible to sign supermax extensions. So that's starting at about $47 million. 4-year supermax extension for Booker. $47 million. This is from Bobby Marks. $47 million, 50.1, 54.6, and $58.4 million in a 4-year contract. That's not bad.
It's good money, huh?
Yeah. Trae Young making it means his rookie max extension that he already signed goes from $177 million to $212 million. So he gets an extra $6.1 million next season, increasing his cap hit and pushes the Hawks over the luxury tax. They have some decisions to make there. But I think as far as the actual teams, I'm okay with it. There are going to be people in Philadelphia that are screaming about Joel Embiid making the second team. That's going to be one of the bigger discussions here. Joel Embiid, second team, but the way the NBA does it, they still classify by center. And I've heard some of the bigger names in the NBA discuss this. I know that Zach Lowe talks about because they were classified as both, putting Joel and Nikola Jokic on the same team. But I also know that Tim Bontemps was very adamant on those podcasts, and I've spoken to him about it, that the NBA still classifies it by position. So I'm going to vote by position. So there's those two competing things. So what ends up happening is something like Joel Embiid actually getting 414 points to Jayson Tatum's 390 points. But because he got more votes at center, he goes to second team center. And because Tatum gets all his votes at forward, or most of his votes at forwards, I think he might have qualified as a guard. He gets the forward spot, and since so he outpoints all the other forwards. Bottom line is Tatum gets first team with less points than Joel Embiid, who gets second team All NBA.
Yeah, that's the problem with this, right? It's not so much that Joel Embiid was voted to the second team, right? Like he had enough points to make the first team. It's the positions, and it's with the NBA on how they do some of this stuff, right? We had this issue with the All-Star game too. We've had issues with some of the award voting in the past, just kind of in general, in the criteria actually doesn't exist for almost any of these awards, and it's just kind of left up to people, right? And it makes these things kind of nebulous, and it always creates a little bit of controversy, which maybe the NBA wants, because look, we're talking about it.
Sure.
Certainly Joel Embiid was good enough this year to be a first team All NBA guy, but because of how it is, he doesn't get to qualify. If you let voters just pick the 5 best guys, I do think he probably would have been on there over Jayson Tatum, and the rest of it would have been as it is. And I would have probably had no problem with that for the most part, even though I probably wouldn't put Devin Booker on my first team personally, but I don't really have that much of an issue with it. It's just kind of how this goes, right? Until the NBA, spends some time one off season trying to kind of look at the awards. And look, it applies to kind of all of them, right? There's no criteria for games missed and things like that. And people are allowed to kind of make their own interpretation of that. And is that really how it should be? And I'm not sure that it is, unless they kind of want this. And then you get into that whole Bill Simmons and Jalen Green thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it seemed maybe there was kind of like a personal issue there, and he wanted to be kind of proven right on a draft status thing. So says what he said, even though he then brought the guy on his podcast to try and make it look like, oh, I didn't actually screw it up. I love this dude. When that was a bad look. Like there's these kind of issues around it. And until they sort it out, you're going to have things like this. But the good news for Joel Embiid here is, it's annoying, right? He's going to feel super slighted at the end of this year. Probably if you're Philly, he's going to come back even more motivated, hopefully. But it doesn't impact that much, right? Like it doesn't impact that much. It means nothing in the grand scheme of things here, right? It's not impacting a contract or anything like that. For those Supermax deals, the Rose Rule and all that, it's literally any all NBA team. So I don't know. Like, yeah, he should have been on first team, but he isn't. And like, okay, cool. The sun's going to rise tomorrow and we're okay.
Yeah, I don't give a damn about the difference between first, second, or third team All NBA. Like, if the voting's screwy, that's fine. Do you want to fix the voting? That's fine. If they voted Embiid first team and Tatum went down a second team, so what? Because when you go to Basketball Reference and you call up their page, it's going to say Joel Embiid 4-time All NBA. It's not going to say 1-time or 2-time first team or whatever. He's just going to be an All NBA player. He's a 4-time All NBA player, one of the 15 best players in the league this year. That's all that really matters. Where I do have the problem is where last year Tatum got left off and the quirk in the voting cost him $30 million. Now, no one's crying for Jayson Tatum, and he's done a great job of being like, yeah, I know I'm going to be fine. It's not a big deal necessarily in the grand scheme of things, but who am I to mess with somebody's money? It's there are plenty of people who deserve, money around, all we can get into that part of the argument. But the fact is that he earned a certain amount of money. That's his split. That's his cut. That's how much money is coming into the NBA. And because of a quirk in the voting, he lost out on a significant amount of money that he deserved and he was due, and he's not going to get it. That part I don't like. I don't like messing with guys' money. So if it impacted that, like if a quirk,
then it'd be a different discussion, and like there should be rightful outrage about that. I agree with you there. But now, like, who cares? It's okay.
Right. If the quirk in the voting this year cost Trae Young, I would have been bothered by that. But the first team Joel Embiid stuff doesn't matter. First team, second team, third team, it's all NBA, whatever. That part is fine. If you're on the team, you're on the team. Whichever one it is. Stop crying about it. It doesn't mean anything. And
do you think Utah's got any gripe on this one with both guys missing? I'm kind of like, I think about them and it's like, maybe, but again, I don't have like that much to complain about this. I wish I did. I'm not very hot takey here. Like everyone seems about right in some order.
Karl Anthony Towns making it over Gobert. I'm fine with it this season. Cat had a good season. Gobert had his standard season, I guess, which is a great season as well. Basically, somebody has to be left off. And again, like Gobert is going to make plenty of all NBA teams. So was he screwed? Somebody, when you've got 4 or 5 good centers, like the way the voting is, that's a quirk, but it's not going to cost Gobert any money. So whatever. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You could make an argument that maybe Donovan Mitchell could have gotten in there. Chris Paul missed some time. Like, you could have put him over Chris Paul. Would that make sense?
Maybe, like, that's probably the claim you could have, but I also thought Chris Paul was so good, and again, being on the best team in the NBA by far is going to get you a lot of credit on this sort of thing. So, like,
you got the best record, and you got 2 guys on there. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I looked at this and I was like, all right, let's find where the issue is. We got to record a show tonight. And I'm going to find it and I'm going to hammer it. And then I'm like,
there's
there's nothing.
As far as
it's
guards
fine.
go,
They got it right this year.
Book deserves it. Luka obviously deserves it. Trae Young had a great year. People might argue against Trae Young. People in Utah might say, no, Trae, look, say what you want to say. They're both not great defensively, but Trae is the worst defensively. And Utah was still good. How does Utah not get anybody in the Atlanta Hawks, who were a play-in team, still get Trae Young? Was Trae Young so much better than Donovan Mitchell that he deserves a spot over Mitchell? I can hear that argument.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then
Utah's got a little bit of a gripe. I'll give him that.
A little bit, sure, a little bit, but also Trae is not undeserving. So when I'm looking at players that you can take off, okay,
so that's the argument, right? It's like, who do you take off? That's always the argument on any of these things. If you're doing a Mount Rushmore of people, right? It's like you get 4, you get 5. Who do you take off? And you've got to make a good case for why those guys should not be on there. I don't know if there's a great case or a great argument for anyone on these All NBA teams to be
Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler over Pascal Siakam.
I was thinking about that one too, and maybe I don't mind.
How about Jimmy Butler over LeBron James? Why is LeBron James on there? He's been on he's been on 18 times.
18 straight, I think is what it is, right?
The Lakers missed the playoffs completely.
That probably has to do with Jimmy Butler playing 57 games, though. That's probably the bigger issue there, though. I'm trying to remember how many. LeBron actually played fewer,
right?
56.
He played 56, right? So
yeah, okay. No. We're talking about this now. Yeah,
but
it's that.
But you can say,
throw it on there.
You can say are you really an All NBA player if your team sucks that bad? You couldn't pull anything out of these guys, but I mean, that's a whole different conversation. I'm not, maybe not. I don't know. I'm fine with it. Like I said at the beginning, I'm kind of fine with all of this. All right, let's wrap this up. There's a lot of, you can go to all of the Locked On for all of these guys. I'm sure Locked On Lakers would like something positive to talk about, so they can talk about LeBron. We'll come back to talk about a quick preview. Oh, you like that one? I know you like that one, Jake.
That's good.
I'm going to come back and talk about the Celtics and Heat at BetOnline. Celtics are a 1.5 point favorite on the road. Game 5, 1.5 point favorite. That's surprising to me. So I found those odds on BetOnline, the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. The latest odds, like I just said, you can check out what the NFL futures are, Major League Baseball, whatever fights you follow, it's all there. It's your continued source for all of your sports wagering information. You've got live betting, you've got esports you can bet on, all sorts of stuff. So head on over to the website, check it out. Use your mobile device if you'd like. Learn about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Jake, the Celtics and the Heat get into Game 5 in Miami on Wednesday night. Well, I mean, what do you think? Let's just start with you. I know I'm the Celtics guy, but let's start with you. Let's give you the floor first before I get into this. Having seen blowout followed by opposite blowout, what are you looking forward to in Game 5?
Yeah, it's kind of like a weird back and forth series with the actual just games being, the series being back and forth, not the actual games being back and forth. I want to see health. I wanted to ask you that as we were kind of planning out the show. Is this one potentially simple as, the healthiest team is going to the NBA Finals? Basically.
That's
Jimmy what it
Butler,
feels like, right?
Jimmy Butler's not fully healthy. Tyler Hero missed a game. Kyle Lowry nursing that hamstring. He's not himself. Who else from Miami?
No, and they were very clearly missing Tyler Hero in Game 4. You could just see it.
I know that on the Miami side, they're not even when Hero comes back, I don't think they even want to play him. But I just looked at when Victor Oladipo was playing and scoring 18 points in the first half against the Celtics, I was like, that doesn't bother me at all. I'm watching that saying, okay, fine. Because what the Celtics were able to do was single cover him. They didn't help onto him. They were able to stay home on him. And okay, he beat single coverage. He's still a decent player. He'll be able to beat single coverage. But what he didn't get was the defensive attention that Tyler Hero does. And sure, Hero is not shooting well, but he does have the ability to get into the middle of the floor, and he does draw attention in the middle of the floor. So I think that Hero being out hurt them. But I think what really hurt Miami the most is that Robert Williams for the Celtics was playing, and he's the number one thing for the Celtics. If Rob Williams is playing, it changes the entire dynamic because he protects the rim. He's a great roamer. He's a great helper. And he just doesn't allow some of the things that Miami was able to get away with in game 3. It's another rim protector. Him and Al Horford together is just, it's almost impossible for Miami with them being hobbled, with them being shorthanded, and their just general inability to play in the half court. If the Celtics are hitting shots and protecting the ball and not turning the ball over and giving them transition opportunities, if you've got Rob and Al Horford back there, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Heat to manufacture points. So,
and you see it in the free throw disparity too, these past 2 games, right? You saw particularly in game 4 that he was almost just a deterrent down there to a certain degree, and that they were kind of like scared a little bit, it seemed like, to drive and attack. They only had 14 free throws in that game. Boston had 38. You see that lack of aggression when he's out there, and it's like a stark difference for kind of the way they approach trying to score. And you said it, right? Like, where's the offense going to come from, especially if you're not manufacturing those really easy points at the free throw line?
Yeah, that's the thing. And, from Miami's side, they were fouling a ton, and it was reaches, it was slaps, it was the Celtics were attacking, and the Celtics did a great job. They don't always do this, but they got Miami into the penalty, and they kept attacking and forcing the issue. Miami also fouls a lot. They're a team is prone to fouling. The Celtics took advantage of that for once, and that got them to the line a lot. So the number one thing for me in the Celtics series is, can the Celtics protect the ball? Because in game 3, you saw they turned the ball over 23 times. Miami had 19 steals, and they turned it into 33 points.
It was game 1, 2 as well, right? Like they struggled with I thought as well.
Ton of turnover. If the Celtics are turning the ball over, they're going to lose. If the Celtics are not, then that means Miami doesn't have transition opportunities. If they're not turning the ball over, that means they're either scoring or the ball is just getting slapped out of bounds and they're retaining possession whenever Miami does get their hands on the ball. But generally, if the Celtics are scoring and able to come back and set their defense, and if you've got Rob and Al, then you take away Miami's transition, and Miami can't score in the half court. So if you do that and you build a lead, it becomes incredibly difficult for Miami to come back. So Miami needs to find a way to force those turnovers to get out there and run. If they can, and if they're out there running, then they have a chance to really build a lead. And when the Celtics start turning the ball over, they have a tendency to let that cascade. And so 5 turnovers turns into 8 turnovers and turns into 12 turnovers. So that's the key to this game. If the Celtics can protect the ball, they'll take game 5 and they have a chance to close it out in 6. Got to think that Ime Udoka is hammering that point home. This is the most important game of the season right now for the Celtics. And it's obviously the most important game in a long time for the Miami Heat. The winner of this game is going to have a real advantage.
Yeah, no, I think so. Right. It puts it creates it's going to be an elimination game no matter what in game 6 from this one. And I'm kind of with you. And I wonder if Miami's going to be able to get enough offense to really be able to keep it up. Fair to say Victor Oladipo, his defense is maybe also going to be key in this one, coming in off the bench and kind of the role that he's playing. As you're saying, they need to try and create turnovers. They need a little bit more disruption. That seems to fall on him to a certain degree, unless we're going to get Jimmy Butler of game 1. given the injury, I don't know if that's what we're going to see in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Oladipo's going to have to play out of his mind, and I think the Celtics can just the very simple thing is just don't dribble around him. Don't try to take Oladipo off the dribble. If you got Oladipo in front of you, you make one move. If you get by him, you get by him. If you have to like go between your legs 3 times, just give the ball up. That's the other thing that the Celtics do when they get prone to offense, to turnovers, I should say. The Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum get into the takeover mode, and if you're doing that in front of Oladipo, injuries and whatever aside, like he's still got quick hands, and he'll knock some of those away. So the Celtics have to do
he was job. Excellent defensively, I thought, particularly in game 3 in that second half. And
absolutely.
It's fun to see the kind of like resurgence of him. I wouldn't call it a resurgence necessarily. It's but kind of been fun to see him in this sort of role and like thriving to a degree after all the injuries and unfortunate luck he's had.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he's been pretty good, but he also shouldn't be that good. I think the Celtics can simply just, when you see him, just draw him to you and kick the ball out and force him to make those decisions and cover multiple guys, not just be in front of you. Trying to take Oladipo one-on-one is not smart basketball. Move the ball and cut behind him. You can get to the basket. So
is there any other way the Heat are going to be able to manufacture offense in this one, you think?
No. If no,
that's emphatic.
It's simple though. It's a very simple thing. If they're not getting out in transition, they just don't have what it takes in the half court. They didn't have what it took in the half court, generally speaking. Now with the injuries and Jimmy, whatever percentage of his normal self,
he looked terrible in game 4.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. You'd like to see him at full strength and see who the best team is. But again, if the Celtics don't have Robert Williams, and he's basically going to be listed questionable for every other game he plays in the playoffs. If he can't go, then that changes the dynamic. Maybe you can get to the rim and force help. I will just, my last thing here is Robert Williams. I did a breakdown on the podcast, the Locked On Celtics podcast that's out now, where you can see him picking up Jimmy Butler on the wing, riding with him all the way down the middle of the lane and blocking his shot. And you can see all 4 other Celtics stayed home on their guy. Not a single stitch of help, even from Al Horford, who was down in the restricted area. Jimmy Butler was coming to him, and Al just kind of walked out of the way and said, I'm just going to go stay closer to Bam Adebayo, who's in the dunker spot, because I trust Rob to handle this. And Robert Williams just calmly just rode with him. Jimmy stopped, and Rob blocked the shot. And when you can single cover him and you don't give him outlets to pass, then that's what I'm talking about. No chance of manufacturing offense. You either make an incredibly tough shot or you don't. That's just not going to cut it against the Celtics defense. So
we're going to have another game without a lead change?
You know how many lead changes there have been in this series?
We haven't had one since game 2.
It's a four lead changes in this series.
It's such a weird stat.
Weird.
That's a weird such stat, a wild number to think about. Yep. Only 4.
Yep. It's a 2-2 series, and they've only changed the leads changed hand 4 times, and not in the last 2 games. How about that? Yeah.
All right. I hope for at least, I don't know, like 3 in tonight's game.
Yeah, sure. As from a Celtics perspective, you can have them all in the first quarter if you want. You get 10 lead changes in the first quarter, as long as they ride it out the rest of the way. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see if both of these teams can be on at the same time and not have. I've joked that there's only enough talent out there on the floor for 5 guys at a time, and it just doesn't. I don't know which 5 it's going to be. If they're going to be wearing Heat jerseys or Celtics jerseys, but it's only 5 guys who are going to be good at a time, and the other 5 are going to look like they forgot how to play basketball. And it's going to be very confusing for whoever fan base that is, and they've taken turns switching that up. I want to see both teams actually play well for a game and see what happens. But, I mean, at this point,
with these injuries, I'm not sure if we're going to get that.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. All right, so that's it. You can get more from me on Locked On Celtics for sure. to get you ready for Game 5, and of course after Game 5. So on Wednesdays, I am your regular Locked On NBA host, John Karalis. You can find me on Twitter at John_Karalis.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at NolaJake.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Why not make Locked On NBA Big Board with Rafael Barlow, who's awesome at what he does, covering draft prospects across the world, in person across the world. Awesome stuff. Check that out wherever you got Locked On NBA. Free and available everywhere on YouTube. Subscribe, share. We'll see you next time here on the Locked On NBA podcast.